Loving it. We're going to get just started. I am just connecting us to our YouTube feed. All right, fantastic. Again, good evening. My name is Anthony Avery. I also go by Tony A. I am the Tony of Tony A Artistry Foundation, Inc. We are a 501c3 nonprofit that is focused on providing consultation, networking, support, and career development for independent artists, as well as businesses that support art and culture throughout our community. Part of our outreach is hosting different workshops throughout the year to be able to help empower, educate, and inform our artists so that they can continue to do the amazing things that they do with their talents and gifts, while also still being able to maintain a healthy lifestyle and live and take care of themselves in the other areas of things that we need. I will talk a little bit more at the end, but I'm not going to be before you too long. I am super excited about what we have today. Today we have a workshop to teach us about tax preparation and other preparatory skills during this tax season, which is directed and focused at music artists as well as small businesses and local businesses. We are very much so looking forward to our guest facilitator. We know her extremely well. Her name is Tamara Perkins. She is a certified CPA. She is a good friend of mine. As I have worked with her in the past, she is phenomenal at what she does, and she has agreed to so kindly give just a little bit of her time today just to share out, talk, and help provide some advice, consultation, and guidance. I hope that you'll all tune in and stay towards the end. At the end, we will have an exit survey for you. So please, please, please stay on with us. Feel free to share this out with anyone who may be interested in this information. We do this for the impact. So please, if there's someone who you believe might be positively impacted by this, please let me know. With that being said, without further ado, I'm going to call up Tamara. Tamara, are you there with us?
I am. Hello.
Hi, it is so good. I'm sorry, y'all. Give me a moment while I just enjoy seeing my friend.
I know.
Wonderful.
It seems like it's been forever.
I know. It has been so long. Also, shout out to Pisces season.
Woo, yes. In effect,
it's
coming in. Yes.
It is our time. So we are so excited. Here at T.A.A. Artistry, we encourage the engagement. So please, we have co-hosts who are monitoring the chat. If you have questions, of course, Tamara will be facilitating and sharing out and different things like that. But we are there to help and support with everything, and we'll have information for you. And I'm not going to take up more of your time. I'm going to unpin myself because y'all don't want to see me. Y'all here to learn about your tax stuff and how to get what you need to get. So I'm going to hand it right over. Everyone, throw some emojis up, some reaction buttons, and let's give it up for Ms. Tamara Perkins, please, who's going to lead our workshop today.
Hi, everybody. And I'm going to ask that you, thank you. Oh, I got a heart. I'm so excited. I'm going to ask that you forgive me if I suddenly mute. I am in my office. I did share with my good friend Joseph when he confirmed that I would be here today that I literally got off work at 6. So I jumped from one computer to the other. You probably saw me shuffling papers when I first turned my camera on, and you know we are in the thick of things. It is the meat of tax season, so I'm wearing all kinds of hats. I still got to be wife, I still got to be mommy, I still got to be friend, but my clients are not trying to hear about not getting to their taxes. So I'm gonna dive in and get you guys what you need. I really didn't know, because there's so many things that I can say. There's so many nuggets. So I didn't really know where to start. We definitely are going to get into some tax preparation, but of course there is, you know, before you get to the starting line to run the race, you got to train. You got your personal trainer that's helping you get your breathing together so that you can run without being winded. You got to make sure your blocks are in the right place. You got to get in starting position. Yes, I used to run track. So With that being said, I'm going to just throw a couple of things out there that might be precursory before we even get into the tax preparation. So let's just talk about being vital, vibrant businesses, right? Because a lot of times that's so hard when you're an artist, because you love your art and you're so passionate about it. And sometimes we don't know how to put a price on it, all of those kinds of things. And so when we get ready to really be serious about our business and treat our business such that it is, where we can still have the passion and the love for our art, but get paid for what we do. There's a couple of pieces that need to happen first, right? And so I'm going to speak primarily coming out of a Maryland-based premise, but this really will apply no matter where you're located. And so one of the first things we need to do, right, is brand ourselves. And a lot of people, the first thing they want to do is get their tax ID number, and they're worried about being, an LLC, so they don't have to worry about liability and things. I'll clear that misnomer up right away and let you guys know that in a lot of states, more states than not, LLCs aren't even acknowledged as entities. And so, although you get these LLCs in a state like Maryland, it does give you legal protection. In a state like New York, it won't. However, regardless of the location, if you're the only owner of your brand, your business, your craft yourself, and you don't have a partner or you haven't elected to have your business treated separately from yourself, and that's really getting into the weeds, so I won't dive like all the way into that. But what I do want to say is that that's a whole separate form and a process that you probably would need a CPA to do for you. You could use a lawyer. There are tax lawyers. You could do LegalZoom. I will throw up the cautionary beware for those of us that want to go to LegalZoom and register our businesses. It's quick and easy, but they charge you a lot for something that you can do yourself, especially in the state of Maryland. Maryland has what they call the business registration website. I believe it's marylandexpress.gov. And if you go to that website, Maryland has pre-forms that are already established where you can just go in and drop in, whatever you want your business name to be, what the purpose of your business is. And for a small fee, usually less than a couple $100s, you've established your business, and all you have to do is just maintain that annually. LegalZoom will charge you usually 3 times what it actually costs to do the registration. And the red flag, the cautionary flag there, is that they set themselves up as what is called your registered agent. And so what happens, and you have to forgive me if you keep looking over my shoulder. My office is in a busy part of Catonsville, and so I keep hearing these noises, and I'm in here by myself, and I'm just trying to make sure like nobody's sneaking up on me. So, but yeah, so they set themselves up as the registered agent, and then any notification that needs to come to you about your business is going to go to them. And once you've paid that initial flat fee, they don't forward those announcements to you. And so then you'll be reaching out to someone like myself 2 or 3 years down the road, and your business will not be in good standing, and you won't understand why. And that'll be because all of the notices reminding you to do your annual filings and things of that nature have been going to whatever random person at LegalZoom did your paperwork. And then you'll be trying to dig yourself out of a hole. So that's nugget number one. The other thing that I was going to say as I branched off from that is that regardless of what state you're in, unless you establish a full entity, a foundation, an incorporated business like T.A.A. Artistry, if it's just you and you're the only member of your business and it's an LLC, that's called a disregarded entity for tax purposes. And so what that means is that you'll still be filing your taxes on a Schedule C. It'll still flow through to your personal tax return, and there'll be no separation or no difference between your business's tax liability and yours. So do want to put that out there, because a lot of times people are like, oh, I'll just get this tax ID number and then I'll give them this W-9. And when they send me the 1099, there's a siren. Sorry, guys. When you get the 1099, I'm safe because, they sent that to my business, but it's not me. But the two of you will be connected, and you'll be held responsible and liable for whatever is paid to that business, just as if it was paid to you, the person. So now that we've gotten some of that logistical stuff out of the way, and whoever's watching the chat, just jump in if I need to address a question. I want it to be kind of interactive, so I don't feel like I'm talking to myself, especially because everybody has their cameras off. But I do see some familiar names, so that makes me feel better. Getting into the tax piece. Once you get your business registered, it is very easy once you have that registration, especially in Maryland, to open up a business bank account. I highly, highly, highly recommend that so that you can keep your personal expenses separate from your business expenses, because it makes things a lot easier for yourself or whomever may be preparing your taxes to validate business expenses, if you will. And so remembering that anything that you need to utilize to do your craft, right? And this is great because a lot of times when we're going to rehearsals, when we're going to gigs, when we're even just supporting other artists, all of that is a part of us doing our job as artists, because we got to have our face out there. Especially when we start getting into acting and things like that, we have to look the part, right? And so you have to remember that, those $300 braids, getting those nails done, guys getting those pedicures, those manicures, eyebrows arched, all of those things, those are business expenses. But it's harder to prove that you did that for your business if you're paying for it out of your personal account. So it's a lot easier to say, I was in such and such a play, and the rehearsals were during the whole month of May, and we had to be dressed for the rehearsals. And so I couldn't go to the rehearsal with my hair all over my head. I couldn't go to the rehearsal without my nails done. I couldn't go to the rehearsal without my face beat. And so it's a lot easier as artists for us to validate and prove those expenses when we're keeping them separate. When you had to get that new lace front wig because the role calls for shoulder length hair and we just shaved our heads, those things. We know they're not cheap, but it's a lot harder to say, oh, I got this for this role when you're paying for it out of your personal account. So it's a lot easier to validate and substantiate things that you keep separate. Mileage on your car, those are things that you want to track. There are a lot of great apps for that, so that when you're driving back and forth to different gigs, to auditions, other person's performances, rehearsals, you want to make sure that all of that stuff is documented and easy to validate and prove. By that same point, and you got to get those oil changes, you got to get those tires replaced. Your car is not going to move if it hasn't been maintained. So those are all things that you're like, but I can deduct that. Yeah, you can, but it has to be able to be substantiated. And so especially if you have different roles, you want to make sure that you can establish clear guidelines between what's personal and what's business. And that's easiest to do when you have those accounts separated. So now we've gotten our business bank account, we've established the business properly. It's tax time. What do we do? I'm going to give you two sides to this story. And I have to remember that I'm live on YouTube and I don't want to get myself in trouble. So I have to tell the truth, but I have to tell the truth the right way. So y'all are used to hearing this from me, Tony. Y'all know how I talk. So I'm going to say this the right way. The IRS requires that any and all self-employed income is reported on your tax return. We all know that if you make less than $600 from any gig, they're not required to give you a 1099. We also know that we gig for a lot of places that just don't do business well. And I'm gonna call them out. I'm a PK so I can get away with it, particularly churches. They are horrible at doing what they're supposed to do, especially the little local storefronts and the small little churches that we've connected with over the years, because mama went to that church, auntie goes to that church, those types of things. So we may not always get a 1099 when we do work. That being said, it is very easy to document and support the income that you receive when you're paid on a 1099. That is beneficial to you because when you need to show income, and it's particularly hard for us artists, where especially when we're like the starving artists that all we do is we love our art so much we just determine that's all we're going to do, and we're not going to get that 9 to 5. When that's your circumstance and you need to buy a home or purchase a car, a lot of times we don't have regular pay stubs, right? And so all we have to substantiate our income are those tax returns. That being said, if you don't have some cute little kids running around, or you're not married to a very supportive spouse that happens to have a W-2 job, that can create a tax liability. The best thing to do in that instance is to have a licensed tax preparer, but preferably a CPA. And I'll tell you why I said that in a minute. I'm not, trying to drum up business for myself because I'm like busier than I need to be. So I'm really just giving y'all like the good tea. You wanna have your ducks in a row so that you can get those things done without it being a challenge. Thank you. um, CPAs are held to a higher standard. For my licensure, I'm required to do 80 continuing educational credits every year, 4 of which have to be in ethics. If we're found under any circumstance to be unethical by any means in any way, whether personally or professionally, we lose our license. I can tell you personally, for me, losing my license would pretty much mean I'd be homeless, because that's all I do at this point, and it's like the primary source of income for my family because my husband deals with a disability. I got a small 5-year-old child and a 16-year-old boy that's bigger than his father, so they eat a lot, we eat a lot, and so money is very important. That being said, anybody who has ever worked with me from a professional standpoint with taxes knows that I study tax law adamantly. I'm not going to tell you anything that's going to get you in any trouble. I do utilize read between and live in the gray areas. Tax breaks that others have used for years, I gladly pass on to those of us that are not always privileged to them. And I'm going to leave that on the table. Y'all can grab some on y'all way out. What I will also say is that there are times when someone not giving you a 1099 works in your favor. I'm gonna leave that way I put it. There's some of that in the back if you need to go get that out the cabinet, and we don't leave that on the table. So other than that, moving forward to the actual tax preparation, I will tell you that y'all can see me. I got on my little TurboTax jacket. It's that time of year. And so this is the season where I supervise those cute little commercials that y'all see where the people dressed in all blue tell you that they can do their taxes for you. Some of them don't always know everything that they need to know all the time. And so when they don't, there's somebody like me sitting in the back office typing them answers to tell you what's good. So that being said, there's nothing wrong with utilizing that service. For what they will charge, you probably can find a very reasonably priced local CPA. And I'm gonna leave that where that is. And I will say that should you decide to do it yourself, it's really not impossible, right? But I do want to caution you that as you blow up, because we all know that's why we with Tony A. It's about to be on and popping. So when those deals come in, you're in the studio every other weekend, and you're doing videos and all of that, and the money is flowing. You probably want some help managing your money. I know I have somebody to help me manage mine. Just because I'm good with budgeting and all of that great stuff, I can tell you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, but I need somebody to help me make my money grow. That's not where I, live. So I have financial advisors to tell me, put this money over here so we can do this while you do that. That being said, I don't want anybody to be afraid of filing their taxes, right? What I will tell you is that the IRS is not going to go away. They're very backed up. They are very slow right now, but they're still coming. So if you haven't filed, my advice to people is to file before they come asking you to file, particularly when you're in our line of business. Because if they've received 1099s that have your social security number or your business tax ID number listed, they're waiting for you to file. They're not going to reach out to you until the statute of limitations, which is 3 years, has passed, because they want to give you the courtesy to get it in before the deadline. If you haven't filed within that 3-year time frame, their understanding is that you don't intend to file, and so they're not going to wait any longer. But when they reach out, now you have to file under their under their premise, and they've already got an idea of what they feel you owe because they've seen what your income is, and they err on the side of if you didn't file, then you must not have any expenses. So whereas though you may have received, and I'm just going to speak up and send some good atmosphere over to Tony A. And so, the 1099s come in for Tony A, and well, they're 990 now, so it won't be an issue. But the 1099s come in and they see the 100K revenue that's come in, and they say, well, you haven't filed, and we know what the tax is on 100K. So, we're looking for these taxes. And he may have paid out all of his staff to the point where it may be $5,000 left after all the expenses between the studio time, production time, commercials, ads, advertisements, social media, marketing, all of that stuff has happened. It's $5,000 left. They don't care. So in their mind, you owe them taxes on 100K. Now you have to prove to them why you don't owe them taxes on 100K. And they questioning everything because they already have in their mind that they do taxes on this 100K. You don't want to have to prove yourself to them. You want to be innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until proven innocent. So always get in front of them and file before they come for you. That's my recommendation to everybody. Again, they let it sit. They don't reach out to you until after that 3-year mark, because then the interest and penalty is already accumulating from when you were supposed to file. So you already have 3 years of interest and penalty stacked on top of what you may or may not even owe that they're expecting to receive from you. So I always advise against waiting if you don't have to wait. Even if you know you're going to owe, file, let them send you a bill and make payment arrangements. As long as you're making payment arrangements and you're making the payments, they're not going to bother you. But once they establish a liability and you're not paying on it, they go from 0 to 60. You don't want them to snatch what little bit of money you have out of your bank account. You don't want them to put liens on your assets. It's always better to be proactive instead of reactive. Trying to think if there's anything else in that vein that needs to be addressed. That's probably the bulk of it. I say keep amazing records. Documentation is the best resource. I always say it's better to try to include it or ask your tax preparer, can you include it, and have them say no, than to have something that you could have included and not have the support for it on the back end. So I highly recommend using debit cards, electronic transactions, things like that are easier to track and trace and hold on to. Receipts are not your friend. I know a lot of us live in a cash world. We're used to cash. Thank God for Cash App and all those things that have made us go electronic. Including the pandemic, there was a blessing in that, despite how challenging it may have been. The receipts now, the paper that they're on, you put them in your pocket, you look at them a week later and you're like, what was this? Because the heat transfer just takes the ink off of it. You can't read it. And so then when you go to validate an expense on the back end, the documentation isn't there. And that's what they want, right? They want us to lose the paperwork and the documentation so they can say, yeah, no, I'm not taking that. So you got to pay taxes. So at the end of the day, we want to mitigate as much liability as possible, but understand that it can't all be avoided. So we just want to be prepared in all circumstances. Trying to think if there's anything else that I'm missing. I had so much that I wanted to say, and I feel like I said it like that quicker than it came out in my head. I'm definitely willing to answer any and all questions. I see a lot of different businesses and business types that were getting posted. Each one of those are going to have their own little nuances. A lot of them I'm familiar with. Some of them I may not be, but I've worked with a lot of different industries. And so typically, I can have some recommendations as to what's acceptable and what thresholds are in certain businesses versus others. But if it's one I'm not familiar with, I'm going to be leaning on your expertise to tell me what you need to do to maintain your business. Nobody can tell you how you run your best business better than you. So I think in terms of like instruction, that's probably the bulk of it. but I'm willing to answer any and all questions. They don't have to be tax related. That is not all that I do, but you all have me all to yourselves. So, and it's free. I don't do that too often.
Anyone want to raise their hand, ask a question? You can put it in the chat. Oh, from Detrice, we have any tips on how to handle business expenses versus inventory, shipping, returns, broken items?
Perfect. Good question. So if you're a business that maintains an inventory, you have to keep impeccable records because your cost of goods sold is going to be key. So you want to maintain your purchases and track them separately. Keep track of what was sold out of that inventory. If anything is broken, document that as well because you want to use that to reduce your inventory, and that's a lost sale. So you definitely want to have a record of that and make sure that it depends on what you're selling. So if you're selling like a lot of unique items that should be individually priced, you want to track them individually. But if you're buying like stuff in bulk, and you're selling like bulk items, you can kind of just like do a lump, like this lot was this amount, and kind of just track what's being sold there. It really just depends on your industry, but that inventory is key because you don't want to miss out on tracking that properly. That expense is going to really play a major role in making sure your sales are accurate, because we don't want to overpay in terms of our income being stated higher than it actually was because of the cost of those items that you sold. Excellent question.
All right. We have a question that said, if you missed a year of filing, do you file for the last year in current, or will that possibly cause any issues?
That's another excellent question. I always say, when at all possible, go backwards and come forward, especially as artists who are typically contractors, because a lot of times there are expenses and things that we can carry forward that can assist us in the next year's return. For example, just to give you an idea with myself, I'm not really an artist, but another business platform that tends to have carry forward losses, I have a rental property. And so with a rental property, you can only deduct your losses up to the extent that you have investment income. And so I'm limited on the amount of loss I can take on my rental property. And I have a tenant that does not pay timely. So I typically have a pretty significant loss. And so if I filed my returns out of order, let's say, for example, I had not filed last year, and now it's time to file for 2021, and I filed 2021, and we'll say I had maybe $2,000 in income from the rental property this year. But when I went back last year and looked at the missed payments that I didn't get from my tenant because of the pandemic, I would have had a $5,000 loss last year, and I could only take $2,000-3,000 of that remaining loss that I was unable to take last year could have mitigated the income I would have had to report it this year. And I wouldn't know that if I don't do my returns in order. So I always say go back, at least as far as you can, which is that 3-year statute of limitations, if you have unfiled returns, and file those in order. But also, because once you file the current return, it triggers the IRS to look for missing returns. And so let's just say I last filed in 2019, and then I didn't file 2020, and now I'm filing my 2021 return. When I file my 2021 return, the IRS might send me a letter that says, hey, you didn't file for 2020, and it looks like to us you should have. If we're wrong, let us know, but we think you need to file this return. And now you have 90 days to get it filed, or we're going to file it for you. So again, that goes back to the getting to them before they can get to me. um I always recommend trying to do them in order if possible. That was a great question.
We have another question. What is the best way for a music artist to go about becoming a business?
That is an awesome question. That's really up to you and your branding, and that's where T.A.A. comes in, because there's expert experience that can really help you with figuring out what the best path is for the route that you want to go. And so if you're someone I'm gonna just use myself as an example because it makes it easy. If you're someone like me that just sings, with choir groups, and so you're not super unique and looking to do a whole lot, but you do want to do a solo album. I don't, but I'm using that as an example. Then I could very easily just go get a tax ID that says Tamara Perkins LLC or Tamara Perkins CPA and make that a brand, even though that's also legally my name, and register that and use that to move forward. But if I'm super sexy, like this beautiful young lady on the left of my face, I don't know if she can. I don't know if we're in the same order. Well, everybody's screaming, but she know I'm talking about her because she's smiling, and I know her. Um, so if you want to be the one name wonder like a Rihanna, and you want and you want to go ahead and do that, then of course your branding's going to be a little different. And so that's when it would be imperative to get that tax ID number and register that name and trademark yourself, and then move a little differently. But that's really going to just all flow in your branding. And so for years I just prepared taxes as myself. And then my grandmother had the foresight that this was going to become a business for me, and, kind of gave me some insight and prayed with me and helped me come up with a name. And that's how my firm was born. And so, but again, my firm was an LLC, and we talked about it at the beginning. It was just me. So even though my firm had a name, I had a tax ID, it was still me on my taxes. I was the firm. And so it was no difference between Tamara and Gifted by Grace Financial Services. But as we grew, as I brought on more people to work with me, hired some folk, and made this all that I do, I had to go and switch over to an S corp. So that I was making the right moves financially for myself, so that I wasn't spending more money in taxes than I needed to for the revenue that I was now generating. So it's really going to just depend on that path that you plan to take, to really stipulate what your brand will be and how you'll move in that space. That was a great question.
Awesome. Our next question says, I filed a Schedule C for the first time this year, but I have not established a business account or completed my LLC. Is there a chance I could be audited?
No, that won't stipulate an audit. Even if you had done all of those things, you would have still had to file a Schedule C. So that wouldn't have changed anything. But it will help you to establish yourself as a viable business, because what happens is once you file a Schedule C, that IRS then looks to see if you're actually trying to be a for-profit entity and doing this to make money, or if it's a hobby. And the way that they determine that is if you file a Schedule C for a number of years, and there's no growth, there's no additional income, and all you're doing is reporting losses, it does not look like your business is doing anything to be viable and sustainable. It will designate your business as a hobby, and then it will no longer allow you to take losses on that business. So it's kind of important, if you're serious about it. That's a great way to show them that this is a real business and not just something you're doing on the side for fun. By establishing that tax ID number and registering the business, they'll see that that's your actual intention to grow and develop the business as more than just a hobby. So that would be the benefit to that. Great question.
Awesome. Our next question is, thank y'all for putting these questions. We're loving it. It says, besides the bills the IRS sends, how can you find out if you owe back taxes proactively?
The easiest thing to do, and I say that tongue in cheek because it's really not that easy now, is to go to irs.gov and look at your tax account. They have tried to make it extremely safe, and try to mitigate identity theft. And in doing so, they've almost made it impossible for you to even identify yourself. But if you go to the IRS website and set up your account, I will tell you that if you're not someone who files taxes regularly, it will be challenging, because they do prefer to use your most recently filed tax return as the initial grounds for identifying you. If you have not filed taxes in 5 years, and you move around a lot, you might have no idea what the last address on your tax return was. And that's the stuff that they're going to want to use to identify you because that's what's in their system. They also use information from your credit report. But if you don't have a lot of credit, if you haven't purchased a lot of things, that also is going to be a challenge. However, once you are able to access that, that is the most up-to-date, accurate way to see what the IRS is holding on you. And it will show you everything from any reports that have been filed by any employer or person that you've worked for, meaning if they've given you a W-2, a 1099, any of those things, that's on file. You can see what's there. Any tax returns that you filed, the transcripts for that are there, so you can see what you filed in the past. When is the last time you filed? If there's a year that you need to file. And then if there's any balance that you owe that maybe you didn't know about, it'll also show you like year over year what your refunds or liabilities were, what you've paid on it, and what whether you sit at a zero or whether you still owe them money. Those are all the things you'll be able to access from your tax record. So I always suggest, especially for people who don't file regularly, to try to gain access to that. And it could be tricky, but once you get it, you'll have it, and it's a great resource to have. Good question.
Awesome. Our next question is, as a minister, am I required to file a Schedule C?
That is a very interesting question. So there are a lot of clergy provisions, and I hate that I'm so well versed on clergy taxes, but as a PK, and literally being probably birthed in the aisle of a church, I have been enthroned in church taxes and finances for a long time. So it really just depends on if your employer, the church where you work, properly files your taxes. And what I mean by that is ministers are considered employees that receive a W-2 and can have federal and state taxes withheld, but they're not obligated to have or pay we call FICA, which is Social Security and Medicare. It used to be, under most circumstances, that you had to make the election, and I believe the form was at 8832, to have them not withhold the Social Security and the Medicare. A lot of churches operate as if you have made that election, even if you have not. That being said, if you get your W-2 and boxes 4 and 6 are empty, meaning that they have not withheld any FICA, Social Security, and Medicare, you are considered what they call a statutory employee, where you're an employee, they'll withhold federal and state taxes for you, but they do not withhold Social Security and Medicare for you. And as such, they're not paying into Social Security and Medicare on your behalf, which is typically what our employers do. We pay one half and the employer pays the other. That being said, that's what drives you to need to file the Schedule C, so that the Social Security and Medicare tax can be calculated on your income so that you can pay into those systems. Now, that can sound absolutely horrible, because that sounds like you owe taxes regardless, and you kind of do. But the benefit to being a statutory employee is that it's actually like being a contractor that gets taxes withheld, right? So just using, like, this is probably like the youth minister at a church that meets once a month, but let's say your salary was $10,000. On that $10,000, let's say you have them withhold 1,000 in federal taxes and 1,000 in state. So you net brought home $8,000. You haven't had any Social Security or Medicare tax withheld, and that between the two, because you have to pay both your portion, which is 7.65, and the employer's portion, which is 7.65. So it's a little over, it's like 15.5% or so, 15.3 to be exact. 15.3% of your income needs to be paid into Social Security and Medicare. So easy math, $1,530, right? But because you're statutory, just like any other 1099 contractor, gig worker, you can take expenses against your income. So the mileage that you have to drive back and forth to the church and Bible study and choir rehearsal and to go see Sister Mary when she was in the hospital and to deliver communion to your sick and shut in and all of that, you can deduct that, which includes being able to deduct the maintenance and the wear and tear on your vehicle and the dry cleaning for your robes and all of those other things that clergy have to do to be clergy. So that $10,000 in income that you were paid might actually end up only being $1,000 or $2,000 by the time you deduct all of your expenses. So that was a long answer to your question, but hopefully that gave you some insight as to how to handle that because there's so many clergy that have no idea. So that was an excellent question. I'm glad you asked that.
Awesome, awesome. I think we caught up on our questions. Does anybody have any? We got about 12 minutes left. If anybody had any questions, oh, here we go. Is there a max limit on how much I can spend annually to get my hair, makeup, nails, wardrobe, meals, transportations?
There is no max. What I will tell you is if you utilize all of the money that you've been paid on making the money that you were paid, it's not unrealistic. However, like most things, the IRS is subjective, right? So on the off chance, I will tell, first of all, just to alleviate a lot of the stress that's probably hovering in the atmosphere, you're about as likely to get selected for audit as you are to win the lottery. Like that's a real factual percentage on how likely you are to be selected for audit. That being said, though, I always tell people that once you've been selected, you're no longer in that pool of random. Like it's not like, we buy a ticket for this mega million and we don't hit. And so, we go back and we keep buying. So then let's say you finally, you get just the Powerball. And I think if you get just the Powerball, you win like $100 or something lame, or $1,000,000, whatever it is. Anyway, it's not the whole pocket, right? The whole pool. So now that you've won the Powerball, if you go and buy a ticket for the next drawing, you're not more likely to win because you won the Powerball in the last drawing. Audit is absolutely the opposite. Once you've been selected, it's like it's a red flag on you. So now your return is pretty much going to be reviewed every time it goes through. That being said, the likelihood of you being selected is minimal. But once you're selected, it's up to the discretion of the auditor that gets your return. So if I worked at the IRS and I saw your return and I saw your profession and I saw what you were claiming, because I have an understanding of the nature of the beast, probably wouldn't raise a red flag for me. I can't tell you that my coworker Sally over here feels the same way. So Sally might be like, "Oh no, she just trying. She thinks she's like she probably don't even act. She not an actor. She Googling. I ain't even. She not even coming up in Google. I don't know her. She trying to get over. I want to see receipts. Show me all the gigs that you went to on all of these days where you got your hair and your nails done." And so it could be that obnoxious, but it really just depends on who is dealing with the situation. So I always say just make sure you keep your documentation and just be prepared for the worst and pray for the best. I've maybe had I'm not even going to say that. I was going to say I've maybe had one situation that didn't turn out well in all of my years. And I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years now. I know some of y'all not even 25 years old. Don't make that face. Don't do that. And I can't even see y'all faces, but I know y'all making faces. But I'm not even gonna say that that one was bad. That was a person that knew they weren't telling the truth, and I was just like, you on your own. If you want to do this, you're gonna do it, but you gonna have to be the one to pay the piper if it blows up in your face, and it did, and she paid the piper, and it was what it was. But everybody I know who has documented what they needed to document for the most part, with very little exception. And even speaking for myself, I'm gonna tell it God's honest truth. We went, I had a bunch of cornball accountant friends. We all worked together. And one of my friends was getting married in Jamaica. So we planned a whole retreat where we had workshops and everything that we were discussing accounting stuff because we were writing this trip off. And we were ready. Lo and behold, because I had never had that large of a travel expense on my tax return, they asked me for documentation and support, but they waited them 3 years. I told y'all about that 3 years. And I had moved into my house. This is when I moved into my first house. I tore my house up and could not find this packet that we all so eloquently put together. I'm talking about y'all. We paid to get this printed. We had the brochures, the pamphlet, the workshops were listed with the faces and the bios of the speakers. Like we did this thing. I could not find my packet. And so I was like, I told the agent that got my case, I said, I tell you that I have carried this around with me for the last 3 years just for when this letter came. And lo and behold, I moved over the summer. And here you are in October asking me, and I cannot find the box that it's in. It was like I would have had to pay back like, I want to say it was a little over $1,000. Was the tax effect that it had from me not being able to take that deduction. And so I was like, I can't find the documentation, so I'm just gonna pay for it. I said, but I want to be on the record to tell you that I had that documentation. I just can't find it right now, and I don't have the time to look for it in this 30-day window you giving me. And she laughed and she was like, it's fine, but I was Miss Jackson. And it's fine, Miss Jackson. I'll send you out the updated bill and just request a payment arrangement. She was like, you always get a refund. So by the time they get the payment arrangement set up, your refund will probably just absorb the bill. And that's exactly what I did. When I got the bill, I requested the payment arrangement. And I sent that in. That took like another 45 days to process. By the time my payments actually started, I think I made my first payment in either December or January. I filed my taxes in February, made sure that my refund was more than what I owed, and let them take it. And I was done with it. And then, of course, like 2 months after that, I found the paperwork. But that's how it happens. But that agent was very nice. Um, they weren't like, we knew you were lying. It wasn't an accusatory thing. It was just like they came back and requested it. If I had had it, I wouldn't have had to pay it, but I didn't have it. So it was what it was. I have not since then ever been reviewed again. I've never been asked for any support or documentation for anything that I've done since I did that. But that was like a $6,000 or $7,000 travel expense. And I'd never had anything like that on my tax return before. And I've never had anything like that on my tax return now. I still show lots of expenses, lots of losses, but not that particular item. So, just being mindful that those are the things that you could deal with. It just all depends on, who gets the case. This land air and sea thing. That was a great question.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions? I know we have some few other people who just joined us. We are getting questions answered by Tamara Perkins, who is a CPA. She is giving us some amazing nuggets of wisdom on just tax preparation, understanding finances a little bit better. If you have any questions, feel free to ask it in the chat. We have a few more moments left. If it's not something that you feel comfortable with answering publicly, you can send it to me directly and I'll ask it on your behalf anonymously. It's no problem. I'm going to ask a question while we're waiting, just because I know this is a question that I get a lot when I'm talking to artists. How do we, what would your advice be to people who have a genuine fear of filing because they've literally never filed since they became an adult?
The easiest thing I can say, and I said this earlier, but it's worth repeating. It's not going to go away. You can't avoid it. You can't hide from it. Unless you're going to go off the grid and give up your social security number and all things technical, no bank account, no cell phone, just go live in a wilderness somewhere. It's not going to go away. And so it's easier to deal with it up front than to have it get so bad that you're digging out of it. I always tell people, I have people that get genuine anxiety if they see an envelope that says IRS or, whatever state they're in, come in the mail. I get it. Like, I don't want y'all to sit here and think, I'm telling you, I will say again, I've been doing this for over 20 years. I don't want y'all to think that when a piece of letter mail comes in that says IRS in that return address addressed to me, that I don't and hold my breath until I open it. 99% of the time, it's something for one of my clients. It's not even for me, but just the fact that they reach out, I'm like, oh my God, what now? Like, it's a natural reaction. You can't help it. It's just like when you're driving and you see those red and blue lights, and you're like, what speed am I doing? And you start like slowing down and looking, and then they go past you, like, oh, good, they're not coming after me. Like, it's a natural thing, right? That being said, if it's hard for you, get a friend and a glass of wine, roll up something, whatever it is that you do to make yourself feel better, and open that piece of paper and see what it says. And then don't, yeah, that's what I said. She laughing. I'm serious. Like, we do what we do. It is what it is. It's legal. Hello, I got a card. Like, what we doing? But it like, don't ignore it. It's not gonna go away. And don't open it and they be like, oh my God, and throw it in the trash or shred it. They're gonna send another letter and another letter and another letter. And what you don't want them to do, especially if you do work for somebody else and you have an employer, you don't want them to send one to your employer like, yeah, we've been trying to reach so and so and they've been unresponsive. So we need to do this, because now everybody's in your business. You don't want that, right? So we want to avoid that. Call up your good friend, Tony. I need to come through. I got the wine if you got the glasses. I got a couple of these envelopes I need to open. I can't do it by myself. Order something to eat, cook, whatever we're going to do. I'm going to bring Ryan, let the boys play, whatever. Like, I got to open these envelopes. If you can't, just open the envelopes, whatever it says, address it. Don't ignore it. It's better to get in front of it. I said on the podcast I was on, I guess that was last week now, Maryland is snatching driver's licenses. Like, they not playing with y'all anymore. They like, oh, you owe me and you don't want to file and you don't want to pay. Bet. Think you're going to renew this registration. Your tags are blocked. You got to address this or your license can't be renewed. Like, we just think about all of the free money that the federal and state government has been giving out over the past 2 years of this pandemic, and where is that money coming from? Their budgets are built on taxes. If you're not filing taxes and paying taxes, they got to get that money from somewhere. They were giving out extra $600 off the top on the unemployment. Where's that money coming from? It's got to come from somewhere. And so they need people to file their taxes. And you may not even owe them. But if you ignore filing and they owed you and you wait that 3 years, now they don't have to pay you what they owed you. They like, ha, I got you. Like, they know you owe, but they're not going to tell you. And they want that 3 years to go by so that they can look back and say, well, sorry. But if they owed you money and you had filed at the 2-year mark, they would have penalized you for not filing timely. But then they have to pay you interest for how long they've been holding your money. The difference between 2 years worth of interest and that third year is them saying, got them, because they're not giving you the money now. So they happy. They got to keep that refund. They don't owe you, right? But you don't want to owe them $100 and then you wait the 3 years and then they send you a letter and say, you never filed, but now we're requesting you file. And you realize all you owed them was $100. And then they tack on the penalties for not filing timely and the penalties for paying late, and then the interest that started accruing when you were supposed to file 3 years ago, and that $100 is now $800. And you're looking at it like, what in the whole HE and some other stuff is this right here? And you can ask them to mitigate that interest and penalty. And if you get the right person and they're nice, they may. But again, it's up to the discretion of whoever's desk that request lands on. And if they're like, nah, I'm trying to make my commission, and I still got to get three people that they haven't paid before the end of the month. So no, I'm not going to waive that for you. I need you to go ahead and pay so I can go ahead and get this bonus. and that's real. So I advise you to get that one good friend that's going to make you do what you're supposed to do, and will sit there with you over a good kiki or whatever and say, now that we've laughed, let's see what this envelope is looking like. It may not even be anything bad, but definitely address it.
Awesome. Can we all just give it up for Tamara for just taking some time to answer these questions for us? We are so appreciative. We are so grateful. Um, Again, she did this completely volunteer to help out our community, to give you all an opportunity to do stuff. If you look in the chat, you will see that we have an exit survey that we would love for you to take. Again, as she said it earlier, document everything. And we want to show the documentation of the impact that we're having and the positive effect that we're having, and that our community and our demographic appreciate workshops like this. And your feedback also helps us to continue to have relevant services, products, forums, discussions, groups, different things like that throughout the year. Because as was said earlier, we are not stopping. Before we close out, Tamara, please tell people if they are interested in getting a little bit more of your professional services beyond the consultation. How can they reach you? Where should they look for you?
Sure. So probably honestly, I'm in the artist shed. So y'all can definitely find me in there. Reach out in there. I get the messages, I get the alerts. I'm in the Facebook group. I'm kind of hiding on Facebook, but if you can speak and spell, you can find me. Um, if you don't see my face, look for my son's face. It looks real similar to mine. It's just a little younger, a little lighter. And then worst case scenario, if none of that works, my website is giftedfinancial.com.
Thank you so much. And yes, she said the favorite thing that I was hoping that she would say is that she is in the artist shed. So when we tell you that we are creating this tribe of network of just people who are there for resources, you never know who's available to help you, offer advice. Again, it's just a community of people willing to offer the advice. It's right there in front of you, artists. Take advantage of it. Our independent businesses, our artists who have side businesses on top of their side businesses, get all the information. That's what we're here for. That's the amazing work that we're doing. In addition to filling out the survey, if you want to continue to find ways to support Tony A Artistry, please visit our website, www.tonyaartistry.com. You can also give to us via PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, all of it. You can also reach out to us. If you're interested in hosting a workshop, a forum, or professional development, if you have something to share with our community, we want to give you the opportunity to do that as we continue to do this great work. We want to thank you all for participating with us today. We want to thank Tamara for joining us. As always, I want to say a thank you to my staff, to the members of the board of directors who are present on here. Thank you all so very, very much. You all make Tony A Artistry Foundation Inc. exist, and you're the reason why we're here and able to continue to do this work. If you weren't here, we would have no work to do. So we hope to continue to see you. Please look out for more workshops that are coming in the next coming weeks, as well as our Artist Shed Unplugged edition. So if you're into acoustic music and nice, small, intimate settings, we are very excited to partner with Youth Build, and we will be doing that event later on near the end of March. And if you are an artist and you have not signed up and checked out the member services that we provide to help you out, please, please, please reach out to us right after you get off this call. There is so many great things, so much great work that we are doing, and we are just excited to continue to share and spread our love for the arts and our advocacy for the arts with everyone. And outside of that, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to just leave it in the chat. I'll keep it open for a couple quick minutes before we free Tamara up to enjoy her weekend. But otherwise, thank you all so much and have a wonderful